Hello, Muller. How are you?
I am good, Asha. Good to be back in the show with you again.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were away for a couple of weeks, right? Welcome back then.
Yes, yes, but more than a couple of weeks, I've not been on the show for a bit with you. So it's really good to be on the show, trying to crawl into, getting all the background work right because, you and Shamini have got very good at it. Anyway, good evening and welcome to Leadership in Flow Asia Season 3. And today we have Raising the Leadership Bar. And who do we have as our guest today, Ashok?
Before we bring on who we have today, for all our guests who have been locking in since 2022 and watching us right now, what is Leadership in Flow Asia all about? This is a show where we have conversations with leaders in Asia. And what about? We always having a conversation around three areas around growth, but around their personal growth, their leadership growth, and their business growth. And tying with that is today's topic, which is raising the leadership bar. And we have someone interesting, Major Dr. Prabagaran, or Dr. Prabagaran, or Preba, as sometimes we call him. Now, share with us, Mother, how did you find this very interesting gentleman?
I'm trying to figure out whether I found him or he found me, lah, basically.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, yeah, like, I need to ask him. Like, I can't recall actually who found who, but I think we were LinkedIn friends. But more
Nice.
importantly, I think he writes. He's very passionate about both learning and sharing his knowledge. But lately, what I found out is that we have an organization called CMI. Did you know about it?
Uh, okay, so when I had the privilege of meeting our esteemed guest in January, that's when I first heard about it, but I didn't go deeper. But today, you are going to tell us more.
Yeah, and we talk about chartered accountant, right? Now we
Yep.
have chartered managers, and I think Major has been passionately talking about raising the standard of leadership, which is why we're calling the leadership up. And what is really very interesting is some of the key highlights of what does it mean to actually raise the leadership bar in this part of the world, specifically Malaysia, of course, and
Hmm. Hmm.
Singapore. And what can that do for us as a business, as a nation? But you know what, we can talk all we want, but let's welcome Major
Yes,
Dr.
please.
Prabakaran so that he can enlighten us with his wisdom. Hi, Major.
Hi, Malar. Hi, hello, Ashok.
Hi,
Good to
Major.
see you guys again. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be in your show.
Okay, you're most welcome. He's always saying very nice things. Major, thank you for saying yes, and thank you for actually being the chair, and congratulations for being the chair of CMI Malaysia. So
Thank you very
I
much.
think it is an honor to have you in our show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh
Thank
no,
you.
Samani is already warning us. She said, "Hello everyone. Make sure you draw out as much as you can from Major, Ashok, and Malur." Thank you, Shamani. So we have to draw out. So let's get going. Major. One of those things that really excited me, and you really got me excited in our pre-show, is that you introduced us to the word called power distance, right? And after you actually introduced us to the word, I actually went and searched it a little bit. Our 2024 index is actually at 100, which is very high power distance. So help our audience, who are currently online, understand what is the impact of power distance in our business results.
Sure. Thank you, Malar. Actually, I had the joy of reading more about power distance from your LinkedIn post today. So I thought if anybody want power distance, refer to LinkedIn's post of Malar. Okay, for the benefit of audience, my dear friends, power distance. Some of you have been to organizational behavior courses in your degree or master's. You may have heard of it. Hofstede, a Dutch psychologist, came out with this term. Literally means if high power distance is nothing to celebrate, yeah, that means like what Mahler said, 100. Some researchers says 104. It means the distance between those who seems to be in authority and the members of the team is very high. So imagine you walk into a meeting room, you feel small. Or you go into a party, oh, there are VIP table. Oh, these are big people. So answering your question, Malar, what is the impact? Imagine you are a CEO, almost 60 years old like me. So when you went into university, the subjects like artificial intelligence, data science, or digital marketing, it's non-existence. And a young executive like Kirtana, for example, who grew up in digital world, Malar staff, she will be a better person to talk about digital marketing than the founder of the company. So my friends, leaders who are listening, if the power distance is high, the consequences is leaders don't optimize the most valuable resources that we have, talent. So imagine you hire great talent, HR, and you go and get executive search or recruitment agency to get the best talent. But when they come into the room, the environment, some researchers call that psychological safety. The environment is not safe for me to raise my hand and say, boss, the way you write your digital marketing is wrong. Your photograph is horrible. The language you are using is not reaching the younger generation. You're talking like an uncle. But our persona of our buyers are my generation. So if the leadership or rather power distance is high, one, the leaders may not listen. Number two, the experts who can be your grandchildren's age may not feel comfortable to voice out. So imagine the waste. You hire engineers, but you use them as office boy.
Okay. Nice. I think very beautifully put, even though I didn't like the idea of having my grandchildren now at workplace, right? I'm not comfortable with that. Yeah. But I think you've made it very clear. So what I'm getting from you, Major, is that power distance is really, our distance between the highest and the lowest power within the organization. So the bigger or the higher the power distance is, we are not going to be in touch with the business, because a lot of the things in terms of relevance, right, is coming from the younger generation, is what you're saying, and we will not have access to that information because they don't have access to the people higher up in the organization. That's what you're saying. So and information is key, right? So if we hire talent who can't talk to us, who can't tell us, and we don't have access to that information, then obviously, it's wasted resources, is what I'm hearing. So fantastic. And you also have touched about psychological safety, and that's very interesting, right, Major? Ashok, I think you know about this, right? Today I posted, I said, in fact, in most of the senior management programs that I talk to, when we do strategic, leadership, one of the questions we ask is that, we talk about is KPI, right? And I often ask, so when the KPI is passed on to you, do you totally accept it, believe in it? And they'll go quiet, right? And if you don't agree or accept, can you talk about it? And almost all the time, right, 80 to 90% of the time, the room is quiet. And this is at senior management level, right? Now, what does that say? That says that, even at a senior management level, the power distance is pretty high, right? So on one hand, we want to get get a lot of information out of our talent. On the other hand, there are some things that we are doing which is probably silencing the voice that actually counts to build our business. So thank you for introducing us to power distance. It's become my favorite. I'm actually going to read a lot more about it right now. can you just enlighten us a little bit more as to, what factors contribute to the power distance, right? Because you did say, and from what I read, I know it's culture, but tell us a little bit more. What are the factors that actually contributes to the power distance here, Major?
Yeah, thank you. I was pretty excited, the privilege of being in your show, so that encouraged me to read up about it. you know. So I was very much impressed or inspired rather by a Harvard Business Review article by a Harvard scholar, Kate Sweetman, who is actually working in Malaysia for an agency, and she has global experience. So someone who have studied organizational and leadership. So when I read her Harvard Business Review article, if I may refer here, it said in Asia, power gets in the way. It's a very interesting article. So what are the factors? Number one, if you remember, respect the elders. We touch elders' feet in many ceremonies. All right. In Malaysia, sometimes if you go to some organization, addressing the VIP can take 2 minutes in the speech. Dato Sri, Tan Sri, Tun, blah, 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 blah. I got nothing against respecting elderly people. Yeah, I love that. Unfortunately, this deep culture is rooted at workplace, especially among leaders who are very conscious about their title. So they say, hey, Datuk coming, Datuk coming. With due respect, that gentleman would have been, or lady would have been given the title of Datuk. For example, I'm very familiar in military. So a lot of our chief of navies, admirals are given title, well deserved, for their leadership role in military. But if they start using that leadership, the title, as the recognition for them in the corporate world, that will be disaster. So answering your question, the reason is deep-rooted culture, but the challenge is using that culture in the wrong context. So respecting elders is good everywhere. In fact, respecting everyone is important. But if you expect somebody just because he has a big title, he is a CEO, he is a Tan Sri, and so on and so forth, but in that case, if he or she use that as a privilege to make decision, then it's a challenge. So my suggestion is, I'm proud of our culture of respecting people, but leaders must always be aware. Use this power distance at the right place. We don't have to change our culture, but in organization, we are all interdependent. If we are dependent on a young person for information, respect him or her and give them the voice.
Mm. So you brought up something really interesting, right? Because culturally, I think we respect the elders, like what you put it. But what you're saying is that we need to see it in context, because you're also reminding me, on one hand, you can't have power distance, while on the other hand, you are promoting diversity and inclusion, because diversity and inclusion is about respect. On the other hand, you cannot be promoting psychological safety, because that's about giving voice to everybody. Because we know that the whole idea of diversity and inclusion is to make sure we don't lose out on any voice that actually matters to the business. And improvement in business simply means we improve as a community and as a nation. So don't let culture get into the way. Culture is supposed to show us how we live, and when we let it affect us by maybe building up our ego in this case with the power distance, it is really going to affect the growth of our community, especially our young minds that truly matter today, right, in our business. So yeah, so thank you, Majors, for helping us differentiate between what's culture and what is required for the business, and how do we see that in context, so that we begin to do things to reduce the power distance index in this part of the world. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Muller. Okay, so I like this because, like you, Muller, I've not heard about this power distance until we met Major, right? And of course, today in your LinkedIn, you elaborated a bit more and it's become more curious. And of course, there are some questions in even in the LinkedIn and some thoughts that comes out in mind. Is it a societal thing? And you have also clarified it can be cultural, it can be societal. But something that you mentioned earlier, right? Because you said it's about the distance between the authority and people, and then you said leaders be aware, right? Because we're all interdependent with each other. We need to give everyone the voice. But you say leaders be aware. So when I look at the office environment or the enterprises that we are in, right? What has happened with leaders, right? Or how did they become leaders that has created a power distance? What has happened there? Apart from cultural, what else? We recognize cultural, it could be one area. But how did they even get promoted to be a manager? And what has happened, So is there something there that created the power distance? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, very interesting question, Ashok. Uh, Listening to you brought me my days in USM, in 1986 when the World Cup football was playing, if you remember Diego Maradona.
Mexico football? Is it the cup final in
Argentinian.
Mexico?
Yeah,
In
in
Mexico.
Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mexico, where Argentinian became the champion, and Maradona during that time is a Falkland War crisis between Argentina and UK, and Maradona,
The hand of God.
hand of God, led. You see, the essence of it is in 1980s, Maradona is a legend in football,
Mm.
and he's the man. Yeah, but because of that expertise, he was promoted later to become the coach
Mm.
of the Argentinian team.
I remember that much later. Yes, yes.
Exactly, much later.
Mm.
So the challenge to the question that you asked, how the leaders, get into the power distance or get into, because sometimes they are over glorified for their past performance.
Ah, okay,
And in countries where our conscious about our rank, these are higher authorities, these are people with title and all. Ryan Holiday in his book, Ego is the Enemy, beautifully reminding all leaders, that if you are not aware that your past glory is not enough for you to lead, because your individual ability to score goal or individual ability to design or individual ability to get the sales is different than your ability to lead a team.
Got it.
Because the idea, you and I know very well, you have spoke to many leaders here, the idea about leadership is bring the best out of your team. So I hope this while I'm talking, I'm not only talking to the leaders, I'm talking to myself, because bulk of what I'm talking about, I may not even practicing it. Yeah, I could be a culprit here. So I'm just reminding myself, bring the best out of others. And one word that I love about Stephen Covey, the legendary 7 Habits guru, he said the highest level of maturity is when one realizes we are interdependent. The richest man cannot be eating diamond and drinking petrol. Yeah, somebody must go to farm.
Okay, we're all interdependent. I like that. Okay, so thank you for. So what I'm hearing from you is this: when you talk about Maradona, yes, he can be a wizard on the field. He can be scoring goals, creating chances, and what have you got? But as a manager, a coach, he was not the best, because the capabilities are different, right? Capabilities were totally different in that sense. And what you said earlier on, where people get promoted for sales, I've seen that a lot in the sales organizations, where what happens is, yes, as an individual contributor, I perform extremely well. I'm hitting my sales targets. I'm exceeding it. And some or other, then I get promoted to leading a team. But it's totally different, right? It's totally different skill sets, because leadership is a whole different ball game in that sense. So what I'm hearing from you is, apart from cultural or societal, in an organization, there are times that they might recognize your past glory and make assumptions that you're able to lead and push you there.
Exactly. Very
Right?
well said. Very well said.
Okay. So if okay, let's go with that premise. And let's say that that's a premise that creates the power distance, one of the factors. But let's look a little bit into that and say, today our objective with you, Major Doctor, is to bring down the power gap as much as possible. For you, we want to get ideas from you on how to bring that down. So since we talked about leadership, and you said leaders be aware, then my question to you is this: what specific areas do we need to focus on via leadership development to close that gap? Because our objective now is there is a power distance. We want to close it. There's a cultural thing. We recognize it. We accept things as they are. And within the organization, say, hey, we've been promoting people and all that. Okay, all right, I get that. But now today we're saying we want to put a handbrake, stop. How can we now focus on the specific areas to close the gap via leadership development? What are your thoughts, sir?
Nice. Via leadership development.
Yes.
So, the number one question is, especially when you are in authority, in position, for you to acknowledge there is possible competency gap. Back to Maradona, for example, he's a legendary, wonderful football player, but unfortunately a disaster as a leader. With due respect, I'm a great fan of him, the late Maradona rather. What happens if leaders take some reflective mode and say, I've been a fantastic salesperson. I know the art of selling, but my next position as the director of sales or the CEO of the company is to bring up the best out of people. And for that, I need to inspire people. But how do I inspire people? For example, or I need to create an environment where my team is comfortable to voice out new ideas. How do I create an environment like what we are talking about, diversity, equity, inclusion? Rhetoric and reality is two different things. How do I make it a reality? So my suggestion, if I may, to all leaders is celebrate that we may be unconsciously incompetent. There's a saying, yeah, if you don't know what you don't know, how do you know that you don't know? If you don't know what you don't know, how do you know that you don't know? So I want to suggest to myself and all leaders out there, when we don't know something, celebrate it. Because that means we are in the second level of learning called consciously incompetent. The lowest level is unconscious incompetent. And in countries like Malaysia or many other countries in Asia, where the power distance is high, leaders will feel uncomfortable to raise their hand and say, I don't know this, can you help me? Whereas in countries like Denmark, New Zealand, where the power distance is small, leaders can take public train without bodyguards. So my message is, acknowledge that we may have competency gap. Don't just send your people through HR, L&D. That guy need training. This guy need training. That guy need training. Ask yourself. There's a saying here. If one lion lead 1,000 sheep, the sheep will behave like a lion. But if one sheep lead 1,000 lions, the lions will start behaving like sheep. I hope you get the message. The leader must be able to acknowledge that he or she need help. And recognizing that we have a gap is a strength, not a weakness. Recognizing that I don't know, it's a strength, not a weakness. Humility is a strength, not a weakness.
I get that. I get that. And thanks for sharing that. So, what you're sharing is one of the most important, or one area that leaders should start thinking about is celebrating unconscious incompetency, right? In that sense, right? And be brave enough to say, you know what, I don't know everything, and ask questions. Now, it seems easier said than done, isn't it? Because here I've been promoted because of my past glories, right? That means I am expected to know everything. So how do you help bridge that gap? Because here the reason why I got promoted to become a leader is because of my past glory, because I know everything, but how do I now have the confidence to be able to say I don't know everything? I know I have to say it, but in front of people I put up a facade. How do I break that facade? What do I do differently?
Nice. Let me go back to the concept of maturity continuum in the 7 habits, if you remember. What Dr. Kavi, I'm sorry, friends, if I go back to 7 habits, this is one book that influenced me. I happen to be a licensed facilitator for 7 habits, and I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Kavi 23 years ago. That interaction transformed my life. So one thing is, the highest level of maturity is realizing the interdependence, meaning a leader who is aware. Is there anybody know everything? I mean, is there such thing in today's world? An hospital, the best surgeon in the world cannot do his surgery if the auntie who is doing housekeeping of the operation theater don't keep it clean, don't keep it hygienic. Am I right? If the town council people don't clean the drainage in our area, the risk of COVID, or rather, risk of dengue, the risk of flooding because of not good drainage system is so high. So what I'm telling is, whether they're a housekeeping person, we are all interdependent to get the job done. So a good leader is someone is well aware his interdependency or her interdependency. In other words, they will appreciate the team. They will be comfortable to sit down with the team. I was conducting training at your border in Johor for a couple of months ago for a major MNC. So this general manager of the company, number one guy, who is a brilliant mechanical engineer, I know him for many years, one of the top manufacturing director in the country. After lunch, I went to class and he said, sorry, Preba, I want to meet up with my friends. He just walked through, sit down with the factory operators, and the way he talk is like a buddy, rara. Later, after my class, he shared with me, he get so much of wisdom when he is interacting with the lowest level in the organization, the operators, from their perspective. So when he talked to his senior managers, then he know whether the senior managers know what's happening on the line. And this is not during election just to go for vote, yeah. This is in their day-to-day life.
Wow. It's a beautiful story, a beautiful example of how to reduce that power gap in that
Exactly.
sense. The power
Exactly.
distance, right? How to reduce it. And it's about humbling yourself and learning from everyone, right?
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank
Exactly.
you very much. And this leads to competencies where Malar is now going to be itching to ask you, okay, so do I want to talk to you about Stephen Covey? I'll come back to it later. Right. Let's go, Malar.
Yeah. All right. So I'm glad Ashok feels that he's dependent on me at this moment. Ashok, uh, we must welcome. I think we haven't welcomed Jay Sinaya and Sarjit Singh, who said hello earlier. And Sarjit, yes, my Sarjit Singh has come up and said the path to personal excellence often diverges from the journey of bringing out the best in others. Major, what you tell me reminds me of Ram Charan's leadership pipeline model, right? Very clearly, when someone is an individual contributor and they're promoted because they're really very good at what they do, and when they're put into managerial position, all right, he talks about values, time application, and skills that needs to shift for you to be good at the next level. With clients that we work, I think theoretically we know that. Theoretically we understand that, right? But we still promote people into a future position based on their past excellence, whether it's from individual contributor to a manager, or from managing others to maybe managing managers. So every time you take on a greater portfolio, we know that you need to upskill or reskill yourself, both in terms of skills and in the way you think about it and how you spend your time. And that's why I love Ramcharan's work, right? Now, and that's exactly what you're saying. So how do we know that, as if we are conscious about our unconscious incompetence, if we know that I know what I don't know, I know that there are things that I don't know, then I seek onto the path of knowing what I should be knowing, what I really am incompetent at this moment. But how do we now see organizations, when it comes to leadership development in the pre-COVID, many companies had structures. Now organization structures has become nimble, has become very matrix based, and organizations are figuring out how do we now set standards, right? So some organizations have, some organizations don't have. Now for individuals who are listening and they are keen learners and on the growth mindset, how can they figure out what sort of competency do I need for my role as a leader? And depending on which level of leadership I am, and how does CMI, contribute to helping individuals understand this competency, Major?
Thank you very much. Brilliant question. Listening to you reflect on the profession that I have a lot of respect, medical doctors. No matter how busy they are, they won't give you prescription without diagnosis. Am I right? Sometimes we have to
Nice.
wait. They say,
Mm,
okay, Malar, go to pharmacy first, then come back to my clinic. It'll never happen.
mm,
So what doctors do is treat every individual patient, and before treating them, diagnose.
mm,
So I was introduced to this wonderful tool called Management Diagnostic by CMI. So as I mentioned, CMI is a professional body started in UK from British management standards about 75 years ago, then evolved into a chartered institute with hundreds of thousands of chartered managers. When I was introduced to this, while I was teaching a DBA program in one of the university. The DBA program's candidates comes with certification from CMI. So I got a privilege of being a member of CMI. And then I came across this tool, a simple diagnostic tool. So when I click that, there's a series of questions. So my suggestion is, Malar will be happy to share the link for the benefit of the audience. And I'm sure there could be many other tools. Yeah, of course, as a CMI chair, I'm privileged and I'm perhaps even biased to this standard. Every organization may have their own competency standard. Diagnose. Go through the diagnostic. So you're here, you see, how many years experience do you have managing team and process? So those who are young, 1 or 2 or 3 years, their expectation is different compared to those who are in the senior position. So the diagnostic tool is defined based on 75 years of research, collaboration with industry practitioners, academicians, and I went through that. So when I clicked, then I realized there are areas that I need help. So if somebody else come and tell, Preba, your interpersonal communication is no good, I will, how do you know? But when I go through the assessment, when they give a clear indicator, and based on that indicator, I recognize that my interpersonal excellence or interpersonal skills is no good, then I will have the humility to call Malar, I need help with EQ. Can I join your class? Otherwise, especially when we are senior position, going back to the power distance, especially we are very conscious that we are the authority, people don't know. So my suggestion to every leaders is diagnose what are the possible competency gaps. So if you are an individual contributor and earmarked to be the people manager or the CEO or the entrepreneur or a president of an organization, and also politicians, identify possible gap. And before your weaknesses become a disaster in decision making, be prepared. You got it? So that is something that I love about many, like, an engineer won't come out with a drawing for a building, or an architect, for example, without having knowledge about the soil structure. Then he knows, he get the expert who are assessing the soil structure, the civil engineer or whoever the expert is. Based on that data, they will decide how many stories of building is suitable. So every profession is interdependent. You won't be cooking something without realizing who is coming for eating. If a person is a diabetic, then you will look at alternative to sugar. So diagnose before prescribe. So if you are going for training, diagnose. And in today's world, you don't really have to go for training. There's so many self-directed learning opportunities. All right, you can just give a call and say, Ashok, you have been in the leadership framework for many years. I'm having these challenges. Can we meet up for a coffee or a Zoom session? I need 15 minutes of your time. I'm sure Ashok will be more than happy as long as his schedule way ahead. So I take a lot of that privilege. Until today, I have what I call as industry advisory board. The name sounds wow, but it's actually a group of friends where I can get free ideas. Because you get authentic ideas when you are genuine in seeking help. Not mere certifications. Getting certifications, your PhD or MBA, whatever, is very much focusing on meeting the examination requirement. But once you diagnose, you have weaknesses, and CMI's professional standard give that framework. So in summary, leaders, and when I say leaders, not necessarily board members or CEO, in a factory, from an operator, when you become a line leader, you are a leader for a group of operators. Auntie who is sweeping, taking care housekeeping, if she is taking care of 4 or 5 other people who are housekeeping, she's a leader. You got it? So leadership is for everybody. The skill set required, the competency required, the mindset required, the tool set required is different. And this management diagnostic gave me wonderful ideas on what are the gaps.
Very nice. Very nice. I know, Mala, you're going to summarize it, but I just want to tell you, Dr. Prabha, if you call me for coffee for 15 minutes, I'll give you more than 15 minutes. I'm more than happy to have it with you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mala, summary.
I was just thinking, I said, what did I do by bringing a major into the show? Because he said, don't need training. So now I need to look for another job. So that's where I've become a little bit de-energized, but never mind. I know where you're coming from. So it's really interesting. I think one of the most important thing is that instead of throwing people to acquire skills, but do we actually really know where we are and where we want to go and what is required? And can we then acquire the skills that is required that that can actually enhance our role, whichever leadership level that we are in, is what I'm hearing. Which is why frameworks are very important, because it guides us to know and understand and recognize, be aware what could be possibly a competency that we don't have, and this incompetency can actually act out as a weakness and sabotage our role as a leader, and we don't want to do that. And which is why diagnosing is actually important. In fact, as you talk about the medical industry, what I was actually thinking is that the diagnostic tool that you're talking about seems to me like the regular medical checkup that we do. Don't wait for a problem until you diagnose, but go and check in to see whether you're on track, and that seemed to be the diagnostic tool that CMI is offering. And as well as, I think there are many diagnostic tools. So basically you're saying that go for a tool and choose the right tool, and if you need a tool, CMI is actually offering a tool. All right. So thank you, Major, for enlightening us and helping us to see the perspective and the importance of having journeying or mapping out your leadership path, right? So, okay, Ashok, I'll pass it to you, and because I know you are dying to
It's
ask
okay. It's
me.
okay. I was having fun listening to you. No, okay. So, Major, wow, thank you. With 75 over years, right, of research within CMI, and that's the diagnostic tool you talked about. I think it's brilliant. We don't hear much about this CMI assessment. Because like what you rightfully put, or even Mala was saying earlier, accountants and all that. We heard of chartered accountants and what have we got, but we hardly hear of chartered management or managers in that sense. And I think this is a fantastic step for all managers to start going do an assessment to understand where your competency. But that's where it starts with what you mentioned. You need to have the courage to celebrate your unconscious incompetence. That means, because as you are doing this assessment, what it really means is you got to have that courage to be self-aware, to look at your gaps. And once you identify your gaps, then you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? If I want to be impactful, what do I want to do? Or how do I be different? Training is one option. I know you mentioned that. That's one option. But it's also very interesting that you also have your own board. And that's a fantastic idea that you've just shared with everyone here, where we can also have our own informal board where we bounce off ideas and to learn from, because that's another way of closing up the competency gaps, isn't it? Now, this is where also I have a very curious question about your leadership journey, because you have been in military institution where you have learned a lot of leadership skills, hierarchies, and you have gained a lot of experience leading a lot of projects and people. And yet you mentioned you met one individual who transformed your life. Stephen Covey. What was that one thing that happened that helped you transform your life? What was that experience like?
Wow. Begin with end in mind.
Nice.
No. Initially, when Dr. Covey introduced the book, my teachers, Mr. Pandian, the license owner in Malaysia, wish him well, wonderful teacher, and Radzi, another wonderful teacher who certified me as a 7 Habits trainer, thanks to them, and many other teachers, of course. So they gave an idea. Visualize you are going for a funeral and you want to pay the respect to the deceased. And when you go near the coffin, all you can see is a huge mirror inside.
Okay.
Who do you see?
Yourself.
Ourselves. Then visualize how you want the eulogy to be.
Right.
So you don't make life difficult for people to say something nice about you.
Okay.
And they feel guilty. Ayo, I'm bullshitting this fella. Luckily he went.
Okay. Nice.
So that
nice.
was the original idea. Yeah. Don't have to worry about people scripting your value. Got it? So that was an aha moment for me, because being in leadership position is a privilege.
Right.
It's an honor. And if we do it right, we can influence organization, nation. If you do it wrong, even the most prosperous organization, family, country can collapse.
Thank you.
So leadership is a calling.
It's a calling.
Leadership is an honor. Use it wisely. And I come from a culture who believe and who celebrate karma. That means every action that you do will be accounted for. And that accountant keeps your record clearly. Even the best lawyers cannot defend you.
Right.
The
This
king
is
cannot
interesting.
pardon you.
Yeah, this is interesting. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Preba, because what you said was one of the important lessons you learned was about starting with the end in mind, looking at your own values, and you script your own values, you script your own stories on how you want to lead, impact, because leadership is an honor, right? So in that vein, how can CMI help leaders in Malaysia to raise their competencies to be impactful in their roles?
Very nice. Very nice.
And what evidence can they take out from here too? Yeah, I'm excited. Tell me.
Sure. You see, when we talk about leadership, when we talk about, just now we mentioned about accounting, lawyers, doctors, they are all governed by professional standards. At times I ask my friends who are in the leadership position, is there a professional standard for leaders? Many of them are not aware. So one thing that CMI, and I believe many other organizations, can help is come up with a standard, a reference. Let's see what is the wheel of leadership from CMI's professional standard. The professional standard is divided into 4 dimensions. First is personal effectiveness. In another word, management start with managing me. If you look
Okay.
at that, managing yourself. Imagine, you said, oh, practice work-life balance, and you are stuck in the office until midnight every day. That means you are not walking your talk. I hope leaders there don't create a badge of honor that I'm busy. Busy is not badge of honor. Busy means you need help with managing time. Seek help. Don't stretch and stressed. Malarvili, flow profiler. All right? Because sometimes we all want to get 9, 10, 9, 10 in our rating, but flow, get more help from Malar on that context. It was a great eye-opener for me that stretching that resulting in stress is no good. So manage yourself. So making decision, communicating and influencing. So when you click this, CMI have crystal clear indicator on how do you demonstrate managing yourself in actionable, practical, value-added activities, not mere rhetoric with nice frames. So that is personal effectiveness. There are 3 dimensions. Each of it, we will have 5 different indicators, which is very, very current. And the next one is interpersonal excellence. You see, providing purpose and direction. Right? Meaning, you may have read a lot of articles. Yeah, talents want to work in an organization that brings meaning. Good talents always have choice. Yeah, if they find their job is meaningless, they will leave even for a lesser paying job. I've experienced that. Developing people and capability. We are all in the training world. Training is not only leader L&D, learning and development's role. Yeah, even among the most celebrated CEO, the late Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, is known to spend at least 5 days in a year becoming a trainer, not reading a script that somebody wrote. He will become a trainer for at least 5 days in a year in Crotonville, the famous GE Leadership Center in New York. Right? So leaders must be responsible in developing people, and developing people not necessarily through training. It could be the way you give feedback, is the way you inspire, is the way you listen, the way you respect. Building relationship, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence is not something nice to have. It's the survival skill in today's interdependent global business world. If you don't know international culture, you may end up in crisis. So personal effectiveness, interpersonal effectiveness, and organizational performance, leveraging change, come up with innovative ideas, managing risk. The only certain is uncertainty. If every environment is comfortable, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can become a leader. True leaders' characters will be challenged during crisis. And if you want to be someone who add value during crisis, you need to have innovative ideas. And I just love the central idea in this leadership framework. Allow me to spend a few minutes emphasizing being. Not talking about it, not writing about it, not preaching about it. Being an ethical and inclusive leader. Being, my friends, being. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarjit. Dr. Sarjit is one of my inspiration. You see, so the whole idea is, in this framework, here we talk about a couple of other things, including work-life balance, including well-being of your team. So if you are a leader who are not paying attention to the quality of life of your team, if you are a slave driver, you may hit the number, but let be reminded that is an ethical issue. Because if someone is consistently disturbed, even at their work home, because of so-called KPI, they may be compromising in their role as a mother, as the wife, as a husband, as a human being. That in CMI, we call that ethical issue. So when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusiveness, the taglines like environment, social, governance, all these values, which is important for business, is inbuilt in this. So when someone who wants to be a great manager go through the standard, they will have an awareness. There are about 50 checklists. You go through each competencies. Then you identify what are the possible gaps. Once you identify the possible gap, seek help. Have the humility to seek help.
Wow.
No
Thank you
one
very
can teach
much.
us if you think we know.
Thank you very much for that. That was wonderful. You showed us the whole competencies and the three areas of personal effectiveness, interpersonal competencies or effectiveness, and about organizational excellence in that sense. Thank you so very much. And you know what? The thought that is running in my head is perhaps we are looking leadership in the wrong way. Perhaps leadership is a profession itself, right? Thank you so very much, Muller. To you as we close.
Yeah. And the time passed on so fast, right? Major, we called you in because, you introduced us to this organization that we've not heard of, CMI. And of course, you've introduced us to professional standards for managers so that we can raise the bar for leadership. And I know you've just taken over leadership in Malaysia. What excites you about leading CMI? What's the karma you want to leave behind?
Yeah, I there are perhaps I can focus on two things. Number one, being a leader is a commitment, is a calling, is a privilege. And take the opportunity from CMI's management diagnostic or any other tools available and be comfortable in acknowledging that you need help. So in CMI, we encourage our members to take up the diagnostic tool, and based on that, of course, I am also in the training world. If you need training, go and get training. There's a 5,000 over organization in Malaysia who are providing training. Go and get help. Globally, there are hundreds of thousands of organizations providing training. Get help. But personally, go and get some help through conversation with authentic people who care for you. So that is something that I would like to have in CMI. The community of leaders, managers, acknowledge that this is a privilege and we need help. Number two, leadership is a profession governed by professional standard. So in CMI, for example, developing people is a leadership competency. Creating a work-life balance is a leadership competency. Building interpersonal excellence is a leadership competency. So managing yourself in terms of personal effectiveness, interpersonal excellence, organizational performance with the central theme of being ethical is a leadership competencies. So my wish is thanks to friends like you who provide platforms like this, and my other board members are already into this initiative. We have 21 higher education universities in Malaysia who is offering CMI certification. So we
Wow.
hope more people are aware and optimize the wonderful learning management system available in CMI for us to, number one, be aware of the competency gap. Number two, be humble enough to seek help to bridge that competency gap. So that is my vision in leading the CMI in this part of the world.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I think you've made it very clear that leadership is a profession governed by standards, and that's exactly standards is what that will raise the leadership bar for us, because it is indeed a privilege to leave your mark and make a difference in the space that you have been honored with, right? Thank you very much, Major. For those who are watching now or probably listening later, please get in touch with Major. I will be putting up his email address here now. And with that, Major, I really want to thank you for the aspiration of wanting to increase our standards, right, for the benefit of, I will say, the greater world that we all want to leave behind for whatever reason. So Major, thank you very much. Before we say goodbye, Ashok, anything you want to add before we say
No,
goodbye, Major?
thank you very much, Major. I love the session. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for sharing. And you know what? I wish you all the best for raising the standards of leadership bars, not only in Malaysia, but around Asia. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Malar, Ashok, and all the audience there. Enjoy your leadership journey together. Let's raise the bar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And before I let you go, Jay Sinaya says, thank you, Dr. Preba. You're spot on. I'm able to relate with you on so many levels. Leadership is indeed an honor, very profound. So, with that, let's say goodbye to Major, put ourselves back.
Yep.
And so, Ashok,
Yes,
wow, that 1 hour went by really, really fast, didn't it?
very fast. And I love that. He's full of energy. He's a lot of ideas, a lot of wealth of experience. And yes, CMI. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
All right. I'm
Nice.
just going to put Major's email address for those who want to
Okay.
get in touch with Major. This is
Nice.
the email address that you can get in touch with him. I'll also put it in the comments on LinkedIn. For those who joined us from the beginning until now, thank you very much. For those who have journeyed with us for the last 3 seasons, thank you very much. You keep us going. Tell us what topics you like to bring us. Introduce us to speakers so that we can raise the bar around us together. With that, this is Malar signing off from Malaysia.
And this is Ashok signing out from the border of Johor, according to.
With that,
Bye
thank
bye.
you very much.